Hey YouTube, Alan back with new video, and I think what's going to probably be a new series of videos. Title, probably something like My Life in Gaming, and I know there's a popular YouTube channel with the same name, but this one I think kind of encapsulates the kind of gist of this series, and that's going to be my journey from 1991 to today in terms of the key systems and games that I bought. And this is arising from the fact that my wife actually looked at my Excel sheet one day and noticed, you have original written down beside some games. Why do you have original written down? And I said, well, these were the games that I originally had as part of my collection growing up. And case in point, which I'll talk about today, the Master System. I didn't start with kind of a full set of games. You know, I had a bunch of games that I had when that I bought during the 90s or was given during the 90s, and that was my original collection. Thankfully, with the exception of 2 games, I didn't sell anything, throughout all these years. So I pretty much have all of these originals still in place. And what I want to do is just kind of take that journey, through the years and kind of talking about what I picked up, when I picked them up, and the memories that they kind of bring about. So this one could be a little long. This series is probably going to be long. I'll break them down. But even this video could be a little long. So I'd recommend kind of grabbing a cuppa and settling in. Anyway, before we get into it, this video is going to be 1991. Probably to about 1995. It's going to focus on the Master System. And what better way to talk about the Master System than to talk about the system itself. So this was the version that I would have gotten back in 1991. This is not my original box and stuff because I got this later on. But it came with Sonic, an extra controller. So 2 controllers, Sonic loose cartridge in the box, and Alex Kidd built in. I love the Master System too. I love the logo. I love the kind of styling. Some great games on the back here. They just call it Mickey Mouse, but Castle of Illusions, Double Dragon, Shinobi, Wonder Boy 3, Ghouls and Ghosts, Golden Axe, among others. And then they have the tech spec at the bottom. It's like ROM 1048K, RAM 64K, and so on. Like, ooh, really the power here. But to be honest, for what was basically a budget system, I think in 1991 for Christmas, this might have cost like £90 Irish pounds at the time. With 2 games, 2 controllers versus the Mega Drive, which alone probably was like 139 or something like that. So it was definitely a good offering. And this, in the subsequent years, like dropped down to like something like 49 or 59 or something like that. So great. Anyway, but as I said, that was not my original box or original system. This was actually my original system. I still have it, and I know it's divisive, the Master System Model 2, because it cut out on the extra AV port. You don't have the card reader slot. Some people prefer the original system's aesthetics. So it is obviously a cost-reduced system. It does have the later version of the VDP though, so you can play Codemaster games. I love this little hatch, actually. I think it was a great way to kind of protect the system from getting dust inside. And I just love the big logo, big bold logo, Sega Master System. It just, I don't know, it felt much more 90s, I suppose, than the original system felt 80s. So it was appropriate for the time. And given that it enabled Sega to create a more budget offering, it worked. Now, system, we've talked about system, we've talked about box. Controllers. So, as I said, I got 2 controllers. Here are the controllers that came with my system. Controller 1, no D-pad left. Controller 2, no D-pad left. So, as a kid, this was highly frustrating. Those Master System pads, they really weren't that reliable. The D-pad itself, the way the plastic was set in from a lot of play would basically start to come away, break. And you could get away with it for a little while, but it would just get worse and worse and worse. So I ended up with, in fact, here's one of them. I still have the D-pad itself for one of them. So you could kind of sit it in and sort of use it, and that's what I did for a long time. That's probably why I still have one of them. I don't know where the second one went, mind you. But not an ideal way to play. And of course, the controllers were quite angular or rectangular, and I could put up with that. But the break and D-pad and the no pause button on the system, not great for a modern gamer. Even as a kid, when I wasn't that far from the system, it was annoying. So there are some games in the Master System that that wasn't going to fly, and that broke. And I eventually got a Mega Drive controller and used that. But not all games, including one of these, would work with a Mega Drive controller. So I think it was in a shop called Better Buys or something like that. I ended up picking up this awful joystick. Now, I didn't know it was going to be that awful at the time. I thought, oh, Batman, he's cool, and it's compatible. It's a Sega Master System controller, and it'd be good to have another controller. So I picked this up. You have your two buttons here, one on the thing, one on the platform, one on Batman's shoulder. There was a whole range of these. They were all equally awful. And they're called Cheetah character joysticks. They're so stiff, they're kind of worn down a bit. But I had to use it. I had to use it at times. And 1992. It is a vile enemy. And I was so glad to get replacements in later years. And honestly, it made me disinclined to play some games. And actually, because I kind of went from this, and there was a gap before I got my Mega Drive controller, this had to fill in. I bag it up, I don't even want to look at the damn thing. So there was a period, not that long of a period, but as a kid it felt like a very long period, where I didn't play the Master System that much just because of the controller situation. Thankfully, I got a Mega Drive controller and all was well with the world. So, in fact, a story about getting a Mega Drive controller, I might have the box. Oh, I do have the box. I should have got that out. Here is the box. Now, this one, you actually see that they had to put a sticker on it saying, compatible with the Sega Master System, use buttons B and C only. So Sega were actually advertising it, or whatever store, but I assume Sega. They said, lowest price guarantee, $9.99. This was actually, I couldn't get this locally, so I had to get a friend of the family they were going up to Dublin, and they said, if you can find a Master System controller, let me know and I'll pay you back. And thankfully, they found this. Initially, when I seen them come with the Mega Drive box, I thought, that's a Mega Drive controller, it's not going to work. And I learned the hard way, because I tried to rent a Mega Drive game once, and it didn't play on the Master System, of course. And I thought, oh, Mega Drive's not compatible, but thankfully it was, and it worked out. Anyway, there's a little controller side story. Onto the games. And the first one, bundled in with the system, Alex Kidd. Really, I suppose there's two games, because they came as a pair. Now, this is my original cartridge, but not my original box. I actually got a box a couple of years later, still during the original life cycle, for my uncle. Actually, randomly, someone had donated them a bunch of games, and they had this as a spare box, and I was like, oh, I'll take that. But originally it didn't come with a box, so I made my own. But these were my first two games, and what a great 1-2 punch. Kind of like the 80s and the 90s come together for Sega. The 80s, Alex Kidd with the original mascot for the platform. I know you could say Opa Opa or even Wonder Boy, but it's Alex. And then Sonic, very much the 90s. Both offer different gameplay. This one has a lot more, you have a bit more of an adventure vibe to it. You have the different items you can get, the different vehicles, Janken that you can play as well. So it was harder, and while I enjoyed it, I didn't enjoy it as much as Sonic. I would later come to enjoy this actually a lot more as I got better at gaming, but Sonic was the reason I wanted the system. It was absolutely the reason I was into Sega. I just seen Sonic the Hedgehog and I was like, whoa, that's amazing, I need to have that. I meant the Mega Drive version, but you take what you get. And in this case, I actually ended up loving this. This version, I think, holds up incredibly well. I've talked about it countless times. Probably is good, if not better, than the Mega Drive version in terms of pure gameplay. It's a real great platformer at heart. It doesn't have the same speed, although in a few places there can be. But just in terms of a great 8-bit platformer, it's right up there. Great sound, great music. Sound and music, they're the same thing. I mean, great graphics, great music. And totally recommend people try that. I know people are put off thinking, oh, how good can that be? But really, that was great. And it set me up for for most of the first year, basically, because that was like your 1991 period. I got that for Christmas. So next year, like that was my first year, I didn't get another game then until the following Christmas. So those two games had to last me. And I got two games the following Christmas. The first one actually came from a market on Meath Street in Dublin. It was on there, and I think it was actually a tenner. And I noticed later at the time I would have thought this was Santa Claus bringing them, but it was Outrun. So classic arcade game, really good conversion. I know, like, yeah, it's obviously cut down, super scalers. There's only so much you can do on an 8-bit hardware, but they did a great job, and I still think this holds up really well. We did this in the Master System Challenge. Great to revisit it. I revisit this pretty frequently, in fact, and I just still enjoyed the music. It's good enough. You can still get the classic tunes, but there was plenty to kind of keep me going, especially because it created a nice contrast. Like Sonic and Alex, and I hadn't cleared Alex, I had cleared Sonic at this point. Like these were longer form games for me, whereas this was, I played this for like 15 minutes type of thing, so it created a nice little balance. Now, that was a good game, and to be honest, I'm kind of going, Alex Kidd, Sonic, Outrun, I'm off to a great start. Like, there's a reason why I was happy to play the system for so long as it was. But the fourth came up, Wonder Boy 3. I'm still playing this constantly. Like, this is an absolute classic. There's a reason why I put it like #1 in my favorite Master System games, and I know it's in part nostalgia because I think my top 3 were these 3 games. So 3 of the 4 games that I put as my top 3 picks were 3 of the first 4 games I got for system. Wonder Boy 3 though, absolutely, when we talk about long form, this took me years to complete first time round. It was such an incredible adventure. Again, great graphics and music for an 8-bit system. But the gameplay was just so well honed, and the loop, the mechanic of changing forms and exploring new areas, I just loved it. It's also a fortuitous fourth game in many ways, because this came from a place called Toy Masters, Fagan's actually, I think it was. I had said that I wanted this one for Christmas, but my parents, and back then you put stuff aside, you know, go to a shop and you pay deposit and stuff like that. My parents put it aside, like to put the deposit down and then pay for later. They had made a mistake and they put down Paperboy as the game. And I don't know how it mentioned, like in some conversation later on, it had been mentioned, like, oh, that game you were looking for Paperboy. And I was like, Paperboy? I didn't have for Paperboy. I said Wonder Boy. And I think I might have even played Wonder Boy in the arcade by that point. So I was very adamant, no, it was Wonder Boy. And they didn't really say anything about it until later on. But it was like, they had tried to initially steer me because they were thinking, oh crap, they'd actually put aside the wrong game. Luckily, Wonder Boy 3 was still there. So they were able to correct it, and I'm glad they did. Wonder Boy, or Paperboy is fine. It's decent enough conversion, but Wonder Boy 3 is one of the best 8-bit games, period. Doesn't matter system. This is like top tier stuff. So that was essentially 1991 and 92 kind of all wrapped up. As we go into the kind of next years, now the games do start to pick up because I working part-time, you know, have a little bit more income, that type of stuff. So in the summer, now the dates could be wrong, I'm going from memory here and I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me. In the summer, I picked up the first game I bought myself, Super Kickoff by US Gold. First time as well breaking away from the kind of very Sega first party stuff, different box art. I was kind of, looking back, I'm kind of a little surprised that I would pick a sports title as the first game that I bought myself. It was £25, and I remember, like, because I was a kid and I was saving up the last £2, I think were like all in pennies and stuff like that. So I went into the store and I put my money down, and the cashier didn't want to count them basically. So he's like, keep that. So I was like, score, I'm going to bring this back the next time, you know that. But again, like, countless hours of entertainment. This acted a bit more like, you know, obviously route runs where you could play kind of quick game, but you also had the option of doing leagues and whatnot, and you could play for hours and hours and hours. I really wish it had save functionality or even a password functionality. I don't think it did. And so when you're doing those kind of long leads, what I would actually end up doing is, the Master System 2 had no LED, so I could just leave the power on. No one really noticed that it was still on, it was just not tuned in. And it plays really well. It's hard to get into because it has the aftertouch thing where the ball doesn't stick to the player's foot, and for early football games that feels a little weird because you have to really get used to controlling it and learn how to kind of curve the ball. And of course there's lots of those exploits where you can kind of head the ball, continue down the pitch and just head it into goal and whatnot. But I really enjoyed it. I picked this over a few other games at the time, one of which I'll get to, or actually a couple of which I'll get to. One of them was the New Zealand story, and I never ended up buying that back in the day. I kept seeing it in the store with other games, and I just never picked it up. Would I have preferred it? I don't know, because I enjoyed this so much that I'm glad that I went with Super Kickoff. Next up was a real bag. Actually, you know what? Super Kickoff, I might have actually gone the wrong way around. That might have come the previous summer. Anyway, memory being what it is. Next up was another classic, one from the back of the box, and it's Shinobi. This one was a fiver, so the cheapest game I bought, period, I think, from my system back during its original run when I considered it my main system. And what a good game. I know I constantly get stuck at Mandara. Even to this day, it kind of like is basically the end of my game. But for those 3 levels, I just love playing it. And for a fiver, like, what a win. This was from a store in Dublin. God, I can't think of it now, but I know this was from a Dublin store. And they were selling off basically some Master System stuff. They had this, they had a light gun. And I didn't have any light gun games, so I didn't pick up the light gun. I would later come to regret that. But it was lovely box light guns, and I was like, damn it. In fact, I think they had the Operation Wolf Master System, you know, the box one as well. But I had the system, so like, I wasn't going to pick that up. But they were selling them off, and it was relatively cheap. And it's like, you wouldn't get it for that price today. It was like probably less than 50 or 50 pounds. So that was a shame. But anyway, yeah, Shinobi, really, really good game. And for me, I'm like, this system is just incredible, because every game I'm picking up is a winner. I mean, we got great arcade conversions, action games, platform games, racing games, sports games. Like, what's not to like? And, you know, at the time, even though we were kind of creeping up in years, and the Mega Drive and the SNES were gaining more and more momentum and more like mainstream attention, and the 8-bit systems were kind of starting to fade away, it didn't really feel that way, because it's not like I had the internet. It's not like there was lots and lots of mass media kind of showing you the latest and greatest stuff. I had the kind of guides showing you the games and stuff, and if the few stores that had games, period, would have some Master System stuff, and I was like, grand. The one area where it was clear was like you couldn't really rent Master System stuff. I only ever managed to rent successfully like a couple of games, like World Cup Soccer and Alien 3, and that was about it. So renting wasn't so good. Next up is a couple more games, and these were, I think they might have been bought with confirmation money or something like that. Mega Drive port, Desert Strike. And again, speaking of my main point about, you know, not necessarily feeling that the system was too old or wasn't getting the big games that the new systems had. Here we have like a 16-bit conversion after Sonic was another conversion, and it's a great conversion. Yes, the graphics aren't as nice and so on, but it plays pretty well, and it really does capture the essence like of Desert Strike. So for me, I actually sucked at this one. This was definitely not a game that I excelled at, but it absolutely played like the Mega Drive version that I had played, and I think I might have played Jungle Strike at that point too. It was like, yes, this is the Master System version. It's really, really good, and it's also kind of funny to see licensed from EA on a Master System game. Now I know there's FIFA as well, so there we go. Anyway, that was another nice conversion. Going back to ones that I think that was £13. Yep, I don't have this. I do have the receipt for a couple of them, but not too many. Next up, we have a game that is, for many people, they probably think this isn't a great game. Rather unusual to find it in a small store in the Midlands of Ireland when it was never officially released in Europe. Is Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego. This is technically an American exclusive, but you can actually find copies throughout Europe, especially Ireland and the UK, pretty easily. So it does seem like a lot of copies were imported. I mean, they must have been, given that I picked it up locally. I didn't go to like some sort of grey import store or anything like that. This is like a conversion of a text adventure game to be more character driven and go from A to B. Although I was always confused by things like Sega for the 90s sticker, and like the styling was different. Yes, when I seen this cover and I seen like what looked like a car chase, and I read this background all in English text, I was like, wow, that's so strange, all in English. But I didn't realize it was an American release. You know, it kind of sounds like, oh, you're going around the world, and yes, the screenshots do kind of give it away, it's text based, but the front cover made me think I'm going to do car chases and all this sort of stuff. No, you don't. it is a text-based game for all intents and purposes with a little bit of action because you can control the character directly. And controlling the character directly, and this old Batman controller had to come into play. So that made it a little bit more challenging, but thankfully, other than avoiding the kind of vile henchmen who throw knives at you, you don't really need, much dexterity in the controls. I love playing this. I love that it come with, you got your manual, and you got your detective's almanac, and you could look through here for information about the various countries, and they would talk about flags of the world, so you could look up the flags and see them. It was obviously a lot smaller than the encyclopedias they give you in some of the games, but it totally worked. Anyway, so yeah, there's the manuals and whatnot. Still loved looking through those. Kind of made it a two-player game, by the way. Looking through, digging out the clues. So one person controlled the character, one person looked through the clues. And as a little bonus, I ended up sticking in my Alex Kidd manual, because of course it was bundled in. You just got a manual. Unfortunately, I lost the covers, but yeah, these manuals were so thin. I went, oh yeah, I got space in this box, so stick it in here. This was £18, I think, at the time, and yeah, like initially I was a little disappointed. It was the first time I got a Master System game actually, where I was a little disappointed. I can't get these manuals back in. I'll do it later. But it kind of grew on me and actually became a bit of a kind of an underdog style favorite. Obviously, it's not something that has the same cachet as your Sonics and your Wonder Boys and whatnot, but I really enjoy it, and I'm glad I picked it up. Even back then, after the initial kind of like, oh, this isn't like car chase action game, this is different. After that kind of, I got over that. I really did start to enjoy the game. So, moving on, next Christmas, I think this was probably 1993, I'm guessing. I got two games again, and I picked both of these. And again, there's some slightly odd picks. The first one, this one came from game in probably either Blanchardstown or Tala, Sonic Chaos. I had no clue that Sonic Chaos even existed. And I remember walking into the store and seeing Sonic Chaos, and I was like, oh my god, there's another Sonic game. And that's the beauty, I suppose, of the ignorance when you don't have this mass, information at your fingertips all the time. You could see a brand new game just there sitting on the shelves, and it just blows your mind. Oh my god, so I naturally wanted this, given that I love Sonic 1 so much. This one tends to be a lot more like the Mega Drive versions, focuses a bit more on speed, but it is still a very good game, very enjoyable. It's a lot shorter and easier, frankly, than the other Sonic games. But it also has Tails for the first time, which is a nice addition. And yeah, I definitely enjoyed it again at Christmas. I was a little worried though, because speaking about the easiness, I think I got up to the Aquazone boss like Christmas morning on like my first or second playthrough, and I was like, wow, I've gotten quite far very, very quickly. And like playing the original Sonic, that took me months to complete. So I knew obviously I was getting better at gaming, but also I was thinking, I'm near the end, I think. So how long is this game going to last me? I played it plenty of times afterwards, so it was fine. The second one was a bit of an odd pick, Winter Olympics. And I guess this follows up Super Kickoff as being a pick. Picking up the odd sports titles. This one came from Kilroy's. Yes, it's an oddity to have picked this up, but when I was looking in the window and I was looking at the games that were available at the time, it was between this and the Cyber Shinobi. I'm actually kind of shocked that I picked this, because I love the Shinobi, so surely I should have gone with the Cyber Shinobi. I like the front cover art of the Cyber Shinobi. I just do not know why I said, no, I don't want the Cyber Shinobi, I want Winter Olympics. Maybe I was encouraged to go this way, I just do not know. So yeah, this one, it's one of those like, summer games, California games, you got the different mini kind of game events. I find it brutally hard. Even as a kid, and I spent quite a while playing it. Initially spent quite a while playing it with that bloody Batman controller, which didn't help. I really struggled to kind of get the rhythms, get the button pressing down, and some of them were quite quick, and they were okay, they were enjoyable enough. And then there was a few that were very long and frankly quite boring. So up until now, when I look through all of these games that I picked up, you know, all of these prior games, I would still say, and where in the world, this was the first time where I was like, it's okay. It's, I'm starting to see a little bit of quality dip. I had a little bit of disappointment where in the world, but overall I ended up liking it. Whereas that one, it's fine. It's a decent enough game for that type of game, but it's not something I would go back to too much. Next game, I went back to a more tried and true, a platformer. I think this was again about £13. It's a good port, very entertaining game, very long game, loads and loads of levels and whatnot. It has that very European platformer feel. It doesn't feel as polished. I'm just checking if there's no receipt in this one or anything like that. It's not as polished as say the Sonic games or Wonder Boy games or things like that. But it has it's got a lot of its own charm and whatnot. And funny enough, it's one of the games that I did kind of enjoy the comedy, Dr. Maybe versus Dr. No, Robocod, and all those silly puns and stuff. I still like a silly pun, so it naturally disappeared. It's something that I actually do not recall if I bet this legitimately. There is a way to kind of cheat near the beginning. There's a kind of you can do these kind of actions in a certain way at the main kind of hub map thing, and you can kind of unlock the doors and go to the final boss, which I did to see the ending. And I think I might have beaten it legitimately once or twice, because there are so many levels. It takes quite a while to go through, and it's quite tough. A bit unforgiving at times with some of the collision detection. So, but yeah, anyway, look, it is a good port, and I did play quite a bit. So, like, it wasn't up to the quality of some of the early games, but it was still good and a lot better Winter Olympics. Next up is a game that is, very much an infamous one for me. It is one that I bought in Music Express in Killiney. It is Klax. Apparently I bought this in 13th of the 7th, 1995 for $9.99. I knew it was $9.99. So we're into 1995. I hope I've gotten somebody's the right way around. Actually, maybe I haven't. This one I picked up as a holiday game, so I was away in Killarney and I was looking for, I like to pick up something, and I had picked up some of these other games during the summer as well, and I probably was on holidays when I picked them up. Shinobi, I think, kind of counted as that. So they had two games in this store for the Master System. They had this, and they had Operation Wolf. Now, earlier on I mentioned I passed up on the light gun. If I had picked up the light gun when I picked up Shinobi, of course, I would have been straight picking up Operation Wolf. But because I passed on the light gun, understandably so, I had no games to use with it, I didn't pick up Operation Wolf because you must need a light gun to really enjoy it. I know it says you can use controller or, but I was like, if it's a light gun game, really you should probably use the light gun. And I didn't want to risk it, so I went for Klax. And I didn't mind the puzzle game, to be fair. So I was like, okay, I'll try Klax. Now this was a big mistake, because one, I don't think Klax is a great puzzle game in general. There's when you have Tetris and Puyo Puyo and Dr. Mario and all these other things, like, it's columns, it's just not up there. But also, I had a black and white TV, and this is about matching colors. So I don't know why I didn't really think of that, because the box art pictures do kind of make it kind of clear. I suppose I just wanted a game, and these were the only games I had. So even to this day, I do not like this. Now, not that long after that one, though, I might have a receipt on this one too. I think I'm still during the summer holidays. Yes, in game in Tala for $12.99. Do we have the date? The 29th of the 7th, so a couple of weeks later, I corrected that mistake and picked up Lemmings. This is a much better puzzle action game. Well, it's really, it fundamentally is a puzzle game. It's all about how do you solve each level and whatnot. A great port. Like, it really captures the original, Amiga Mega Drive, game perfectly. 120 levels, lots of different kind of challenges. You can start off with different kind of sections of puzzles as well, so it's not like you have to make it through all 120 in one go. I actually quite like the classic music that they had on it too. I played this for countless hours. great fun and very much put the kind of memory of Klax to bed. And I still think this holds up much better. And again, we're talking 1995, but I was still feeling like, okay, there's still quality games on the Master System, 1995. Now, it was around this time where I was kind of getting much more interested, to be fair, in the Mega Drive. But there would be still a couple of swan songs, if you will, before I did swap over. This will be the last, what I would call, big game that I bought myself for the system. And I think it was a great way to go out. And it was Wonder Boy in Monster World. So this is the final Wonder Boy game on the system. It's ported the Mega Drive version. It's actually quite different. So if you've played the Mega Drive version, I would actually recommend playing this too, because while it's ported, it obviously makes a lot of changes to kind of compress the game down. And this one, I do have the receipt for this one as well. This one was the 23rd of the 11th, 1995. So it was quite near the end, and I think I might have even had a Mega Drive at this point. It was around that point anyway where I was switching over. But of course, when I seen this, damn, I put the receipt away. It's either $9.99 or $12.99. I was like, oh my god, another Wonder Boy game. I have to play that because I love the Dragon Shop. I actually enjoyed the original in the arcade a bit. I played it for 2, so I was like, have to play this. I had never even seen it. It was one of those like, oh my god, I've never even seen this before. And well, it's certainly not as good as the Dragon's Trap. It is still a top quality game and one of the best games in the system, in my opinion. And I would highly recommend people try it out. And as I said, kind of acting a bit like a swan song and a bit like a bookend. And to complete the bookend, Wonder Boy was kind of like the 3rd/4th game, but right up there. The 1st/2nd game that I got was Sonic 1. I got Sonic Chaos in the meantime, but I never got Sonic 2. I had looked for it, and I just never seen it in any of the stores. I did see it in on one, I think it was called K's Catalog, one of these ordering catalogs that you can do, but my parents weren't going to do that. So I don't know how this finally happened for Christmas in 1995. I got Sonic 2 on the Master System. Now I know I had a Mega Drive by this point, but still, I must have seen it somewhere. I was like, Sonic 2, I want Sonic 2. That was basically 4 years of waiting for a sequel, even though I'd Sonic Chaos. I'd seen the Mean Machine review, and they gave it a higher score than most other Master System games, like something like 96. They said it was like the best thing ever, and it looks a lot more like Sonic 1 than Sonic Chaos did. So it's a little misleading. Tails is in the box, and he's running away because he's captured, and you can't play as him. And to be fair, I think they do mention that. Yeah, race to save Tails. So they say it on the back. They talk about you have the hand glider. Wow, how rad, how 90s you could have a hand glider. How Del Boy. You also have a minecart and stuff. I desperately wanted to play this for years. I think I built it up too much, to be honest with you, in terms of hype. Because when I finally played it, and I suppose I was near the end. This was kind of it. I was now more into the 16-bit mindset. I had loved Wonder Boy, but this one didn't really capture the magic that Sonic 1 did. And for years I held that opinion. And I did a video about this kind of recently about games that change your mind. And it was actually the Master System challenge that really made me change my mind on this. It actually is a pretty good game when you give it a chance. Is it as good as Sonic 1? No, it's absolutely not. I think Aspect, who took over from Ancient in the development duties, I think they didn't quite get what made Sonic 1 great. They added in more gimmicky stuff that was a bit fiddly and took away from the core gameplay. The bosses weren't as interesting or engaging either, even though they got more kind of animal appeal, I guess you could say. I preferred the kind of egg-o-matic machines and facing off against Dr. Robotnik. So it makes more mistakes. But when you get past those and you actually look into it, it still is a very enjoyable, very good 8-bit platform game. And it's a worthy game in the series overall. So I'm glad that my opinion has turned around on this, given that it left a kind of bittersweet taste for the Master System as part of an original collection. Because after this in 1995, my mind was basically, that was it. I was done with the Master System. I was now 16-bit. My main system was the Mega Drive. And I'll talk about the Mega Drive in another video. But that wasn't actually the end of the Master System in the 90s. I did pick up 3 more games. Now, I did not pick up box games. At the time, I picked up these 3 games in like secondhand stores or something like that. Like I think it was in the UK or something like that, and they were like 50 pence per cartridge. So I was like, oh, I'll pick these up. In fact, I might have been given this one, to be honest. I'm not entirely sure. Land of Illusion. Wow, this speaks to the quality of the first half of my Master System journey. It was top quality platformer, bit of adventuring element, great animation, great music, and totally stands up to this day in as a great platformer. So it was like, where were you? This was a great game. Next up was the Ninja, and I thought we made fun of this. It was such a generic title with a generic box art, because I didn't have most of my box art. Was kind of like this. It was more colorful, or even Wonder Boy stuff a bit later was more colorful. We had the third party stuff. I didn't have the very early, too many of these early ones. Shinobi was about an Outrun. In fact, Outrun was the only really vanilla one that I had a box for. That was it. So I was like, wow, it's called the Ninja, and it's just got a picture of a ninja. How generic is that? The game, though, was actually, you kind of think it was an early 8-bit title, but it has a lot of depth to it. It like really more of a scrolling shooter than anything else. Got the hidden scrolls to find, and it plays really, really well. So this one was like an eye opener. It was like, wow, this it might be basic. It certainly doesn't have the appeal of like a 16-bit game. Or actually, when I got this, I think I was onto my N64. So yeah, it's obviously basic, but it plays really well. In contrast to the other game I picked up in that period, which was Dragon Crystal. This one, and actually the Ninja, I might have even had boxes for these, come to think of it, I'm not sure. Anyway, I've completed them since then with the manuals and stuff. So Dragon Crystal is, for all intents and purposes, a roguelike game. Random generation, you go this fog of war map, try and bump into enemies to kill them and all that sort of stuff. I didn't like it. I still don't like it. I don't like roguelikes. I don't really like random generation in game all that much, to be honest. I like to learn patterns and improve each time I play. So this didn't appeal to me. And even, the back of the box going on about stuck in a musical nightmare and whatnot. I was like, musical nightmare? Are you just talking about the music? It's crap. Maybe that's it. But to give it its credit, it is an early roguelike on an 8-bit system. That it was pretty unusual, like to do that sort of random generation of the game, of an adventure game, and make it functional, each time. Like, that's impressive. So a fair play to Sega for doing that, which was seen as something that you could really only do on a PC at the time. You needed a keyboard, you needed more power. So, I mean, it does deserve credit for what it is, even if it wasn't something that that appealed to me. But anyway, these were kind of like, they were a bridge, these games. They weren't part of the games that I kind of originally picked up and targeted. Well, the Master System, you could say, was my main system, but they weren't part of when I was actively collecting to do a set. They kind of acted as kind of like a sort of in between. I seen games and I picked them up because I still liked the Master System. I still had all these games and I still had the system and I still played it. I was still playing Sonic and Wonder Boy and Alex Kidd, and I still do to this day. So that may be, like, they might have been outside of the 1991 to 1995 journey, but they certainly had their place. But anyway, I've certainly rambled long enough on this, and I'm covering games that I need to now go and clear off. I hope you enjoyed this little kind of look through my life in gaming from 1991 to 1995, the Master System being my primary system. Next time around, I'll look into the Mega Drive and its kind of slightly smaller, I suppose, impact on my life. Anyway, bye for now.